That is a little bit of Marie Douglas's The People Could Fly, as performed by the American Composers Orchestra under the baton of Ray Hatoda during our last New York Earshot reading this past June. Hello, and welcome to the start of our webinar series through ACO's professional development. This one's called Shoot Your Earshot. It's an opportunity for us to explore this coveted program of the American Composers Orchestra and hear directly from those most impacted. As Director of Composer Advancement with the American Composers Orchestra, hello, I'm LaRob K. Rafael. I get to work closely with composers and orchestras through the EarShot program, which is the nation's first ongoing initiative that builds real connections between orchestras and early career composers. And I think that's what really excites me most about Earshot, the discovery. Every year, we issue national calls for scores and select composers whose voices reflect the incredible diversity of American communities. Those composers then get the rare chance to hear their work read and recorded by professional orchestras. But again, it's more than just the reading. Composers also receive feedback from conductors, from musicians, and mentor composers. They take part in workshops and professional development, and they engage with the community. All of this helps them grow not only just in their writing and in their composition, but also in how they navigate professional relationships and communicate their purpose as artists. Since the program began, Earshot has supported nearly 400 composers across the country. And in just the past year, a large percentage of our participants identified as BIPOC and 60% or more identified as women or non-binary composers. And often these readings lead to something bigger: commissions, repeat performances, and long-term collaborations with orchestra. So for me, the most rewarding part of Earshot is seeing composers not only hear their work come alive, but also step into lasting relationships that shape the future of American orchestral music. And with all of that, I am so excited to welcome our guests for today's webinar, two of Earshot's finest composers, educators alike, Shawn Johnson and Jasmine Moni Guo. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. Now, Shawn is a native of Virginia Beach. Shout out to the East Coast. He studied with Adolphus Hailstork, Andre Kasparov, and Edward Jacobs. He teaches middle school orchestra and even wrote his master's thesis on the music of the Pulitzer Prize-winning artist Kendrick Lamar, which I'm sure we will talk about later in this conversation. And Jasmine Guo has appeared as both a performer and composer in Asia, Europe, South America, Canada, and of course the US. Known for her passion to use music to encourage and comfort people, she is currently the assistant professor of commercial music production at Cincinnati Conservatory of Music. Again, thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank
Of
you.
course. Now, I'll start with the main question that I'm sure is the first question that you get when we talk about this, which is what drew you to apply to this program? What was the appeal of Earshot Readings? And then what did you hope to gain from the experience? Let's start with you, Jasmine.
Um, Actually, I think when I first started applying, the program was called Underwood several years ago. I applied once, I didn't get it, and I didn't have an orchestra work for several years, so I didn't apply for several years. Then after I graduated, the I had one piece that I finished when I was still a student, and I saw that the Cincinnati Symphony is working with ACO. So I thought, well, it would be nice if I can get it. I'll just go over to the local symphony. They're amazing, and well, so I did get selected, but it was with DSO, which is amazing, and that was actually the reason why I applied. I just thought it would be nice to get this work recorded by real musician, real orchestra.
Yeah. How about you, Shawn? What first drew you to apply for the readings?
Okay, so I actually discovered this program through American Composers Forum. So I always look for opportunities up there, and I've applied to several things with mixed luck, but I was really happy that I was selected for this. I had this piece, it's called The Cardinal Takes Flight. I actually originally composed it for a student orchestra called the Bay Youth Orchestra. I actually work for them. I'm the operation manager for that orchestra. And it just seemed like a good opportunity to me. I applied for two different locations. They had one in Nashville, I believe, and then, of course, one at the Manhattan School of Music. And I was fortunate to get selected for the Manhattan School of Music one, which I was very excited because I wanted to go to New York because we have a trip actually at my school. We go there every year. So I've been to New York a couple times now and seeing different things, but it was really, really a privilege to be there. So I kind of had an advantage because I had the piece played before by an orchestra, and I was able to kind of make revisions with students, with the players, and be able to actually submit it in a very polished state for the most part.
So we'll chat about your experience working with the full orchestra, but I want to stick with sort of the application process. I want to ask the both of you, how did you prepare your application? Shawn, you're saying that you had this piece that you were thinking about submitting or that you had, played with an orchestra before, but what tips do you have on choosing the right piece or framing your work for this application?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, it made sense because this is a piece that I had performed. But even if you didn't have a piece that was performed, you definitely want to have something that you feel comfortable with and confident in, something that's polished, like I said. Even if it's never been performed, maybe you listen to it several times and make revisions because it can be a little competitive for this program. For the one that I applied to, there was over 400 scores. So it's not just the musical ideas that are important, it's going to be that polish. I have a few composition students. I've had a few over the years, and one of the important things that you try to teach them is that it's not just the music. Sometimes it's just the way you present it. So it could be the scores and the way everything looks, because that could just put you a leg up above some people. But yeah, you definitely want to have a score that you feel confident in and that you feel comfortable in. And sometimes, even if you don't have one, it might be okay just to submit something that's like a little iffy, and then next year, if you have something else, you can submit it because sometimes you have to hear a no before you can hear a yes. I guess that sounds cheesy, but I applied to so many things and I was very happy to be selected for ACL.
How about you, Jasmine? How did you prepare your application?
So this piece, I kind of just wrote it for myself during COVID when I had nothing to do, and it's a very special piece to me because I was trying to do a lot of more personal writing in it rather than many of my other pieces before this, which are are nice pieces, but this one just is a lot more personal. Uh, so when I was submitting, I wasn't sure if the world would actually take it, so I was very happy that they did. And I agree 100% with Shawn about the look of the score, because you can have the best piece of music there, but if people can't really read it, then that's not good.
Now, did either of you feel ready? I mean, I know you were saying that you were writing pieces already, you were kind of deep in this compositional bag, but did you feel ready to submit for this particular application when you did?
Oh, I feel like we're always ready because we'll never feel ready.
Yeah, I have to agree. Just submit. I submitted this work for other opportunities too and been turned down. So I was kind of like half feeling it, but I was just like, let me submit it. And I did revisions before I submitted it because I was always can just continuing to add different things, not changing the music, but just doing formatting, trying to get it to look as nice as I could with my knowledge. Now I feel a little bit better equipped because now I know what it's like to work with a librarian. So if you know someone that's really good with scores, maybe you can buy them a coffee or even compensate them for their time and just say, hey, how does my score look? Because it really makes a big impact, not only for like these competitions, but also if you get it in players' hands, it's a lot easier for them to process it.
Yeah, my next question really would was what advice would you give to a composer who's unsure if they're ready to apply? How about you, Jasmine?
Just, I think they just do it. It's like what Nike says. You never know. I feel like the thing with writing music is because it comes from somewhere very deep in us, and we've spent so much energy. It's like that's basically what our life means in this one work. We never feel safe to send it out to the world and just let people judge. But I guess just be brave and always submit it. And especially with programs like ACO, you, I must say, you guys protect us so well that it, just do it.
Yeah, I have to agree with what she said. I think you have to kind of let go of that fear, the fear of failure, I guess. You have to be willing to take a risk, especially with ACO. I mean, the application, there's not a fee, right? There's no application fee. Yeah, so you're not really risking anything. You have to spend a little bit of time to get application ready, but I don't really think that's too much time. But it can be hard because with just like she said, I spent a lot of time on my piece too, so you feel very vulnerable. You're like, I really want it to be perfect. I really want it to be, this and that. But you can try to get as polished as you can with the time that you have, and I would just say submit and see what happens because you never know.
So now moving to you've been selected and you're here and you're working with Jasmine, in your case, Dallas Symphony, and Shawn, in your case, the American Composers Orchestra. What was the most surprising or eye-opening part of working with a full orchestra in this program?
I can go first. Oh, is that
Go
okay?
ahead.
I was just gonna say just how fast things move. I mean, it's very, very quick. And that's really eye-opening working with a professional orchestra. I've had things read, like I said, about like student orchestras and even at my school. But working the professional orchestra, you really have to be on your toes. You have to be ready. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Like it's really great to work with these musicians who have such deep insights, not even just their playing ability, but just the things that they say and the commentary that they leave for those that left commentary. That was really just eye-opening for me, getting to work with the conductor and just, yeah, things move really fast, but it's also very fun.
For me, it's also on the thing about fast. I was surprised at how they're able to put, because my piece wasn't the easiest piece to put together, and how they're able to put it together, not just put it together, but actually it sounded exactly like how I had imagined and wished.
I wonder if there were any particular interactions with, the musicians or the conductors or even your mentor composers that stood out for you during your time in the earshot.
I had some moments. Just being in those meeting rooms, Curtis Stewart, I mean, just the insight, and we got into a lot of honestly philosophical discussions about music, which composers do, and we get off track. But also just working with the musicians and hearing the technical aspects, things that you don't even think of, and just bringing out the music, being able to hear them play and respond, because we had some private sessions as well, where some of the instrumentalists brought their instruments, like violinists brought their instrument and played excerpts from your piece and asked, "Hey, do you like this bowing? Hey, how does this sound?" And it was pretty cool. You can just say, "Well, maybe I don't like that. Maybe this is what I intended." So that was a cool interaction. And just getting to work with those composers and the wisdom that they have. I mean, I always had my notebook. So I would even be taking notes from other composers just because I really enjoyed it and wanted to take in as much as I could.
I really appreciate all the notes the musicians gave me because I don't play all the instruments in the orchestra, and I can only learn so much from the orchestration book, and I haven't lived for 100 years to know all of them. So having them just telling me how to fix this one slur would fix all my problem was so helpful.
Now, Jasmine, I'm not exactly sure about your experience with Dallas Symphony Orchestra, but Shawn, I know that this one particular activity was done in New York, and it's called a round robin. Can you explain what that activity is in the best way you can?
Yeah.
How would you
If I
describe?
remember correctly, it was like these fast sessions where there would be like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, something like that, and you'd have the instrumentalists and the composers and the conductor go around. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was not too short, not too long. You got the time with the musicians, and it just went by pretty smoothly for me for the most part. I mean, I can't speak on everyone's experience, but I thought it went very smoothly. Especially, I needed some help with some percussion things, so it was really great. The percussionist there was really amazing. I mean, he gave great advice. Also, just a really nice guy too. So I really enjoyed getting the perspective from different instrumentalists because I'm a violinist and I play a little bit of piano, but just hearing from those guys and their expertise is really great.
No, Jasmine, did you do a round robin sort of fast-paced feedback in your earshot session?
Yeah, I think we had something similar. This was 2 years ago, so
Yeah.
but yeah, the I remember the librarian, the conductor, the musicians each gave their very useful feedback on everyone's music, and we all learned from each other's music too.
Now, speaking specifically about both of your work, Shawn, I want to ask, you grew up with R&B and hip hop and rock and jazz. How did those influences shape the work that you brought to Earshot, if at all?
Definitely the influence of jazz, I think, is a strong one in The Cardinal Takes Flight. Hip hop and all that stuff is always with me, but I really do put a lot of jazz in my music, and I just really enjoy that because it brings. I mean, I like using like extended chords and very rich harmony because it just brings warmth to the sound, and it's really personal for me because it's just music that I enjoy listening to, and I think, I mean, for being honest, jazz, hip hop, R&B, there's a lot of relationships between those, how they work together. So for me in this piece in particular, I think there's a definitely an influence of jazz, just in my own way. I wouldn't say that I'm writing Miles Davis tunes or anything, but just little things here and there that are personal to me.
Yeah. Shawn, I think I remember, was there a trombone solo in the Cardinal?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
love the trombone. I
yes.
just writing pieces like this, you kind of fall in love with all the instruments, and I just want to give something to everyone. The trombone solo, I just really enjoyed that, the way he played it,
Mm,
and just the whole thing was supposed to be like this night kind of feel in that moment. And I think he did a great job.
yeah. And Jasmine, how did your cinematic voice influence your earshot piece, if at all?
Uh, I never think they influence each other, but people who hear my music um, say they do hear how my film scores are influencing my concert works. I guess how I think of uh, the whole structure when I write music a lot of the time, I think of the story and the pictures. I have clear pictures in my head that I want to portray with my music.
Nice. And of course, Shawn, it's got to come back up. But of course, your thesis explores Kendrick Lamar's music. I wonder, did that research and does that research continue to influence your approach to orchestral writing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't say that I put necessarily rap materials in my music, but I just think about that freedom and just that rebelliousness of rap music. I think I like to embody that in my own music, just doing things that are right for me. I mean, with this piece, let me see, I started it right after I finished my master's, and I've been studying so much music, like 20th century music and all this stuff. And this piece is very, I wouldn't say it's 20th century, so it was a little scary for me to study all that music. And I don't want to say, because I was heavily influenced by some of that stuff, even in this piece, but I lean more into my own like sort of sense of the not, excuse me, not 20th century, 19th century harmony, like romantic harmony. So I think that I really enjoyed studying Kendrick Lamar just because of the rebelliousness. And sometimes that can take shape in a different way. Sometimes it's about being rebellious in your own way. Like me and my background, I came up in some not so great circumstances, but I try to find joy and peace, even though my life isn't always that way. And that peace kind of reflects that, I think.
Now, Jasmine, a lot of your work, along with, the incorporation of cinematic and film scoring, speaks to this bridging of Eastern and Western traditions. Does that come into play in your orchestral work or did it come into play in your orchestral work at Earshot?
Yes.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, the whole thing of both Eastern and Western, that's kind of just who I am. I grew up as a kid in China and I moved here as a teenager. So I have all the Chinese aesthetic or concepts in me, but I also learned all my technique and writing for ensembles that are very much in the West. And having that background makes me feel like sometimes people don't like each other only because they don't understand each other. And I don't want to say like I'm doing this great thing, but I do want to tell just simple stories through my music of either the East or the West to let the audiences of both worlds get to know each other a little more.
Absolutely. That's important work. And you've also written for ensembles worldwide. I wonder, how did the earshot experience with Dallas Symphony differ from other experiences you might have had?
I must say I felt like we were just really taking care of like the whole organization. And I know doesn't matter if I make any mistake, there's always ACO behind me helping me to get things through. And it was we were just really well taken care of.
Yeah. And Shawn, for you, has participating in earshot changed the way that you might think about things like accessibility or audience connection in your music?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's really what's the word? It's really kind of a confirmation for me. Like it's really confirming that my style of music could be desired by like a modern audience. Like I definitely lean more into like traditional harmony a lot. And for me, I just love sharing that sort of beauty that we're all familiar with, but and also intertwining some of the 20th century and 21st century techniques as well. So for me, I just feel empowered because this is a piece that I really just I mean, like I said, I felt kind of rebellious. I was just like, I just want to write a piece that I would really like, a piece that I would really enjoy. And it's nice to see that audience responded well to it, not only just the audience, but also the composers who are there as well, who also enjoyed the piece, I hope.
And I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but I want to ask again, what is that one thing about your experience in the earshot readings that you still keep with you, that you take with you, not only in your composition, but just in your day to day as composers and as educators?
Yeah, I think it's just for me, just the empowerment. Just that confirmation, feeling like you're capable. I mean, there were some challenges, being on stage talking in front of people. That's an area I think that I'm pretty good at, but you always have to get yourself ready and be prepared. The interviews and things of that nature, and just sharing your story, just like the same way you make your scores look good, you have to be ready to share who you are. And I think my piece does that as well. It shares a lot of who I am and what I like to envision in the world. So I think that just the empowerment aspect was great. And also, I cannot stress enough how much wisdom I just took from not only the other, the professional composers, the mentors, but also the other composers around who were also educators and some doctoral students. So just looking at their scores and learning from them and just having that companionship was really great.
For me, I I just can't be more grateful to have that many people who actually take so much care of the notes. I wrote down the little story I had in my head, and I want to do all I can to make those as, I guess, performable, and I want them to make sense to the musician, and so that they feel good when they play it, and they feel good when they have to tell my story to the audiences.
Thank you both. And so, what What was next for you after Earshot concluded? What happened? What happened when you got back home and you were like, whoa, that happened?
For me, so after the earshot reading, I think it was a month or so after that, we had a meeting, and ACO asked what could ACO help with us after this. And I made a wish. I said, if we could have more commissions or just get our work performed more, that would be amazing. And I didn't know that could happen in like the next month. I received another email from ACO asking, would you be interested to get commissioned by this two-man program, which is like 5 orchestras will play my piece, my newly commissioned piece. I thought, wow, am I dreaming? Of course. So yeah, right. Oh, I did finish the piece over the summer,
Mhm.
and this new piece will be performed first by the Dallas Symphony Orchestra in no November, and Lexington will be the next.
Yeah, I just kind of want to pause there for a second just to shout that out. It's an amazing opportunity for you to be commissioned. The Virginia B. Toolman Foundation has a commissioning program in partnership with ACO, and it's one of the opportunities that are available for those who come through the Earshot Readings program. So I'm really excited that you got to, take advantage of that opportunity, and now we'll have these pieces commissioned by these orchestras. We're really excited to see how that all pans out. So thank you for your work.
You.
How about you, Shawn? What happened after Earshot?
Yeah, similar thing. Mine was very recent. It was in June. So they care a lot. ACO, they've connected and asked for, what are future projects that you're working on. And for me, it's been a lot of just motivation. I think sometimes being a composer can feel a little lonely. So it was great to meet some composers who are around my same like age and same situation, even if they're a little bit older. Still trying to figure out, what is this composing thing? What is it exactly that I want to do? So having those contacts, building your network, that has been awesome too, just talking to the audience as well. They also have some events before concerts, like, they do a pre-concert event, so you get to meet some of the audience members who themselves might be conductors. There were some people from ASCAP who were represented. Boozy and Hawks was also there, so you get to make a lot of really great connections. And like I said, I just feel, a lot more motivated to compose because sometimes, entering these competitions, you enter so many. I mean, I've entered so many of these things, but it's been really amazing to make those connections and see some people who have experienced the same thing, talking to some people who've also entered a lot of competitions and experienced kind of a similar effect.
Wow, I'm honestly just really proud and glad to hear that both of you have had such an amazing experience. I mean, we really do work hard to make sure that you all do. But I'm curious if we were to just kind of turn it around for a second, if you could change maybe one thing about how you approached the process, what would it be? Cue the Jeopardy theme song.
I mean, I'm not sure if there's necessarily something I would change about the way I approached it. I think that I did well with the time that we had. So it goes very fast. So you really have to be on your feet at those rehearsals, and try to take advantage of the time that you had. So overall, I think it went well. I don't think there would be anything that I would change necessarily. I thought it went really well.
Well, if anything, I would probably have my parts made a little earlier, but if I knew I would get it, because in the very last step, we didn't have a long time, and especially because I work during the day. I thought I was gonna die making those parts.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
echoing Sean's note about if you've got a librarian friend, treat them nicely.
Yeah. I think I might have had an advantage because I had the piece played before, so I got a lot of feedback. So that might be why I might have differed from you because I got a lot of feedback when I initially gave this to the orchestra that I gave it to before.
Mhm. But that's a really incredible process that I think might be undersold about the earshot readings is it really is the opportunity you to submit that score to a librarian and really have them go through it with a fine tooth comb to really point out some things that you might want to consider, and then resubmit it so that it's in its best form for the orchestra's performance. I think that's really cool. So I want to sort of transition us to see if there might be any questions from those who are watching or listening right now. Please populate those questions. Let us know if you have questions specifically for Shawn or for Jasmine or for me, for ACO, particularly about earshot. We'd be happy to answer them. And while we wait for some questions, I want to maybe ask, how did Earshot connect you to community or future collaborations? Now, we kind of talked a little bit about the Toolman Foundation, but are there any other connections that you might have made or are making that are really useful since being a part of the program?
I guess this also has to do with Truman, because as a Truman composer, we get to go to the League of American Orchestras conference every year, and there we get to meet other Truman composers. And this always, every year, I feel like I'm going to meet my best friends once a year. It's so rare for, at least for me, to get a chance to talk to that many composers about our concerns of just writing music and realistic stuff like making parts or making the score look nice.
Yeah, I would say a similar thing, just getting the craftsmanship talk. You know, for me, being out of school for a little while, I'm back in school again, but being out of school for a little while, you kind of lose touch with some of those old composer friends. And just getting some of the, like shop talk, just getting some of that was really great. And just the companionship. I mean, like I said, it's really great to meet all those people and make those connections. Like Ray, I mean, a wonderful, wonderful conductor. So she was just so nice and kind, and she gave really great advice for like, projects in the future and just composing in general. Not necessarily on composing, but just orchestra pieces, working with orchestra.
So I think we're on our final question. I don't know if there are any in the audience, but how about, well, maybe two more questions. Has the recording that you received uh, during your time in the earshot reading, has that been helpful and useful for you as you've gone on? It's a significant portion of the readings that you have, your piece archived and recorded for your archive library. How has that helped you over time?
Yeah, I think it's a beneficial thing. For me, it's nice to have it on your resume for one that you got to be in this opportunity, but also just having the recording for future, applications. Like I said, mine was just in June, so I'm still pretty close to it. But it's definitely really great to have recordings, especially ones that, are you're able to share because it could be really difficult sometimes with licensing. But ACO makes it possible for you to share it as long as it's not for profit, but you can share it for your applications, things of that nature. So it definitely opens a lot of opportunities also just to have it on my website. So when people visit, they can see that I did this project, which was really amazing.
Now, for me, it just makes me happy to watch that video over and over again.
I concur. That piece, oh my gosh, that piece. It took me 2 years to write that piece, believe it or not. Yeah. So it was really amazing. I feel like just 2 years of work and to be able to be there.
So we do have a question from a Mark who says, great information about score polish with librarians. Any advice on reaching out to librarians?
Well, you might want to reach out to like if you have some composer friends that maybe know librarians, LinkedIn could also be great. ACO could also be a resource. You reach out to them, they could connect you to some people. Like I said, you probably should compensate them for their time, right? If especially if you're asking them to look through a 300, 300 measure piece or something. But it really does pay off, and I'm sure that they would be reasonable. They wouldn't ask you for a whole bunch of money. But yeah, if you should, you can reach out to organizations like ACO. They could connect you with some people. They know a lot of people. You can also reach out to composers as well. Because I promise you, a lot of composers who are really well known, a lot of them have librarians or they have copyists, so they probably would know some people that can, that can help you. Now, again, it might cost you a little bit of money, but I think it's worth it because it allows your score to look really professional. And when you enter into competitions, it kind of gives you a leg up in a way because you had it looked at by someone other than yourself. Even if yourself, like there's some really great composers who are librarians and who are also copyists for other composers, but sometimes you miss things when it's your own piece. So sometimes it's good just to have another set of eyes.
I guess if you're still in school, it's always good to reach out to the librarian at your school just to ask for their advice. They're always the nicest people. And if you're out of school, as a film composer, I know there are these copyist or printing services that also provide that service. Although it will cost you a little more, but I think it's worth it.
For the two of you, what did you learn most from that process, from dealing with a librarian? Was the one thing, aside from having a really nice looking score, but what was the one thing that you learned from the library process?
For me, it's actually the librarians are they have the best eyes. They can catch things you'll never see, and they're more enthusiastic about doing that than I guess most of the composers I've ever met than myself. Like I'm not crazy excited about making my score looking that nice. Sitting there is kind of hard. But they're great though. They'll tell you, oh, you can do this, and you can even fit this into that page. You're like, wow.
Yeah, I have to agree. Just a lot of the little details, going beyond just like having a nice looking score. It's just all the little details that they notice that you wouldn't notice, like text, formatting. Like for me, I had like a weird page size for the paper that I didn't even know because like I don't print parts and stuff like that. A lot of my stuff is just digital. But yeah, they really helped out a lot with those things and just making the score presentable and catching things that you want to catch. And yeah, they are very enthusiastic about it. I mean, they're very passionate about it. And as a composer, sometimes it's hard to be passionate about those details. That's why a lot of, really great composers have had copyists who have been their friends, who have been really close friends because they know that they can rely on them to offer good advice.
Another question just came to mind. How do you, when you're on the ground, when you're in the reading session, you're sitting in front of the orchestra, they're playing your piece, how do you deal with interpretive mistakes or interpretive differences in the moment? As composers, like, it's such a precious thing, as you all expressed before. So often you're composing from these very deep places, and then you give it to someone and they interpret it. How do you deal with some differences even when you're there in person?
Uh, I try to see if this is something that I did not make clear in my notation, or sometimes I actually prefer their interpretation. I feel like it's the music is like my letter I wrote to them, then how they read it is how they read it.
That's profound. I need to write that down and put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are, I don't want to say conflicts, like miniature conflicts sometimes that arise, but the players are all very willing, to work with the composer, especially for at ACO. They understand that these pieces are still going to have some errata at the end of it. So I think as a composer, you have to advocate for yourself, but I'll just say you have to be respectful and professional because the players are really putting in a lot of work. And it's work that you don't always see. It might be them actually taking the music home and working with it during their personal time away from the orchestra. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of them really spent time at home doing it. So just be careful with the way that you approach things sometimes if you ever get selected for these type of readings, because, you really don't want to offend anybody, but you should advocate for something if you believe in it. Just do so with caution. You don't want to burn any bridges. You never know. You never know. There might be a player who really likes your piece, and then you've hurt their feelings by saying you were sharp or something.
Shawn, you mentioned a word, errata, which I'm sure many composers have heard before, but can you both talk a little bit about that process? What does that look like when when you're a part of the readings?
So yeah, we sent our score in to the librarian. So they gave us some notes before we actually arrived. So that was part of the process too. But then when we got to the rehearsal, we also got suggestions from the conductor and from the players to make things work better. Like just an example for me, I had a glockenspiel part that went along with the piccolo. And I'm learning. I didn't know that, but they had them in octaves, and sometimes the glockenspiels they go out of tune, so I had to change that part and just make it one note or the other versus doing octaves with the piccolo because that was really hard to get in tune. So there's certain things in errata like that, and then there might be some smaller things like articulations, dynamics, and also there could be some expressive things and some note changes that you can make. So overall, for me, my errata was a little bit more simple. I know some people's were a little bit more involved, but I also had the advantage of having my piece played before. So it might be different for someone who hasn't had their piece played before. But yeah, I thought the musicians were very respectful and they understood that, you know, this is a fast process. So everything's not going to be perfect, but they really did a great job to bring it together in that amount of time that we had.
And for those, sorry, Jasmine, I'm going to get right back to you. But for those who don't know the errata process, but essentially during the readings, you have that first reading with the orchestra, and then you receive the feedback and maybe some notes, and you take your scores home. And if there are things and places that you want to adjust, you write that out and submit it back to the librarian and musicians that next morning. So it is a very fast process. Jasmine?
I had a different experience with the DSO. We only had a day, so we didn't have that whole thing going, which I'm glad actually because they did so well. I wouldn't really change anything unless they suggest me to.
Awesome. Well, the American Composers Orchestra is seeking composers right now with symphonic orchestral works to be rehearsed, performed, and recorded in New York City in June of 2026. So if you're thinking about applying, now is the time to do so because submissions must be received by Sunday, October 19th, 2025, just before midnight. So my last question to you both is for those who are considering applying, what is one thing that you wish you had known before submitting your application?
That's a good question. Honestly, I wish I had known more about the American Composers Orchestra because, like I said, I discovered it on the American Composers Forum. I actually had a friend who did a previous earshot reading, Malachi Brown. He's a cellist and composer who lives in New York. So I don't know. I guess I just didn't really know much about you guys beforehand, but I was just happy that I came across it and I applied. I guess another piece would be just knowing how important, getting your scores to other people was. I think I was very introverted, I think, before this experience, just writing by myself, but I feel like now I feel a little bit more comfortable to share my works with other composers. So even if you don't have a librarian, you can always share your work with friends like other composers and musicians. You can always get tips from other people without having to do that. But yeah, I wish I would have just been a little bit more open about my music, just sharing it with people because I feel like I only want to share it when it's completely finished and polished. But sometimes it's good to get advice before that state because you never know what insights you might get. It's really cool to pick some people's brains sometimes and see the amazing insights that they might have. So I wish I would have spent more time just talking with some of my friends that are also composers.
And to add to that, I wish I spent more time talking to my musician friends. I feel like with many of my work, I always get this panic attack after I submit the score. then I feel like I must talk to these players to see if it's possible to play these on their instrument. And turns out I always think too much because they're a lot better than I can imagine. But I never know. What if I wrote something that looks so simple on the page, but is actually a horrible fingering for that one player? So perhaps get into that whole talking process earlier before you submit the thing.
Well, ACO is a huge community of musicians, composers, administrators, and now that you've both gone through this process, you know that you can rely on and reach out to ACO for any of that support. And to anyone considering applying for the EarShot Readings programming or any other programming that falls underneath EarShot, know that that is a community that is available to you as well. Shawn, Jasmine, thank you both so much for joining me for this webinar. I hope you had as much fun as I did listening to you all. This has been great. We're closing out now, and today's session is a part of our broader Earshot initiative, which is the nation's first systemic program for building relationships between composers and orchestras through Earshot readings, collaboratory fellowships, consortium commissions, publishing, and professional development sessions like these. Earshot expands the definition of American orchestral music to ensure a vibrant and inclusive future for the field. Earshot is a program of American Composers Orchestra completed in partnership with the American Composers Forum, the League of American Orchestras, and New Music USA. For more on our professional development series and all of our other Earshot programs, please visit americancomposers.org. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your Monday.